This screencast is going to explain how to use absolute value and how to understand what absolute value is. So you have 4 key points that are currently on the screen that relate to absolute value. The first point is actually the definition of absolute value, which is the distance a number is from 0. So you could be finding the absolute value of a positive number or the absolute value of a negative number, because all you're doing is finding the distance that the number is from 0. Absolute value is always positive. So if you're asked to find the absolute value of something, it'll always be a positive number. There are 2 numbers for every absolute value, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the next thing that we're going to talk about is absolute value bars. These are the bars that you can see around some of these numbers. They're just 2 upright bars, and all the bars mean is to find the absolute value of whatever is inside of it. So all of those bars that I just circled in yellow are asking you to find the absolute value of, for example, 5, -3, 2 plus 5, etc. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. The directions on this screen say to find the absolute value of the following numbers: the absolute value of 6, -10, 9, and -2.5. In some cases, you might not have these directions that say find the absolute value. You might just be given the absolute value bars with the number inside of it, and you should be able to understand what that's asking you to do. When I'm finding the absolute value, once again, the absolute value is the distance from 0. So if I'm looking at the number 6, I have to find the absolute value of 6. So I need to ask myself, how far is 6 from 0? And that's going to be my key question that I always ask. So notice I wrote that off on the side. How far is the number from 0? Well, 6 is 6 away from 0. Remember, absolute value is always positive. Let's look at -10. What's the absolute value of -10? Well, how far away is -10 from 0? -10 is 10 away from 0, not -10 away. You can't have a negative distance. If you're driving a car, even if you're backing up, it's still not going to be a negative distance that you're traveling. You're still traveling a positive distance. How far away is 9 from 0? So the absolute value of 9 is going to be 9. Notice that all 3 of these answers so far are positive. And what about a decimal? Decimals hold the same thing as whole numbers. So I'm still looking, how far is -12.5 from 0? Well, it's 12.5 away from 0, even though it's a negative number. Another question that you might see is what numbers have an absolute value of 2? If we click back, you'll see that this point right here where it says 2 numbers for every absolute value, this is giving you the absolute value. So this is saying that the absolute value is equal to 2. What numbers have an absolute value of 2? So what numbers are 2 away from 0? So there are 2 numbers. The number 2 is 2 away from 0, and the number -2. You'll notice that these are opposites. Opposites will always have the same absolute value. Now I want you to try this slide or this screen on your own. Similar questions to what we just did together. So go ahead and pause the video, and then once you think you have your answers for the 4 numbers at the top and then for the second question at the bottom, go ahead and hit play again and check your answers with mine. So you'll see that I have my answers. The first answer is 7, 10.2, 8.1, and 12. And then you'll see that my absolute value at the bottom, what numbers have an absolute value of 10.5 would be 10.5 and -10.5. So let's go ahead and take a look at another set of questions that are related to absolute value, and these include solving problems. So notice once again we have our absolute value bars around the numbers or around the problem itself, and that's okay. If we see absolute value bars around each number, we're going to solve each number separately and then do whatever operation is in between them. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first example. The absolute value of -2. How far is -2 from 0? It's 2 away. I'm going to bring down my plus sign. Absolute value of 10. How far away is 10 from 0? It's 10 away. And then I'm going to solve. 2 plus 10 is 12. So that would be my final answer. Notice our second example looks a little bit different. We have the absolute value of 6 minus 2. So in this case, we're going to actually solve inside first and then find the absolute value of whatever that answer is. So 6 minus 2 is 4. Notice I wrote my absolute value bars still around the number because I haven't found the absolute value yet of anything. Now I'm going to find the absolute value of 4 and the absolute value or distance of 4 from 0 is going to be 4. So my answer for the second question would be 4. Final example on this screen looks very similar to the first one. We're going to find the absolute value of each individual number first. So the absolute value of 14.5, or how far is 14.5 from 0? It's 14.5 away from 0. I'm going to bring down my subtraction sign, and then I'm going to find the absolute value of negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2, or how far is negative 2 from 0, is 2. So now I have 14.5 minus 2. I'm going to subtract, and I would get 12.5 as my final answer. On this slide, I would like you to try these 3 problems on your own. Once you think you've solved them, go ahead and hit play and watch for my answers. If you check my answers, you'll see that I found the absolute value of each individual number and got an answer of 13. In number 2, I took the absolute value of 13 minus 6, which was 7. The absolute value of 7 is 7. And then finally, in the third example, I also took the absolute value of each individual number, subtracted, and got 5.5. So just to review, absolute value, once again, is the distance a number is from 0. It's always positive, and there are 2 numbers for every absolute value. Also, just keep in mind the idea of the absolute value bars, because sometimes you won't be asked a specific question, and you'll need to know what those mean.